Good morning and welcome to WKNI TV 25. I don't know if she can hear me or not. I'm sitting here. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? 10 seconds. Hi, Mike Jones.
Morning.
Welcome, Junior. I saw your mom at Walmart last night. She had no idea you were coming on. She said, he didn't call me and tell me.
Well, my schedule kind of stays fast-paced lately, so I did text her and confirm, yes, that's correct.
That light switch over there, Teresa. Yes. Oh, okay. Well,
we're working.
Anyway, yeah, it's weird this morning.
Well, it's like I said when I was getting coffee this morning. I said it's Monday.
It is.
We'll just deal with it.
Oh, I'll tell you, I got up this morning and I'm listening to all this stuff. Chris Havley, my buddy over at WTV1, he's sitting there talking about snow and stuff. I'm like, man, wake up. I'm not in Yankee Village over anywhere, and hey, 2 to 3 inches.
Well, if it were just snow, that's one thing. But when they start using the word ice, I have
Yeah.
memories from the 80s and 90s of ice storms that they were not fun. So I'm very careful when I hear the word ice on the road.
Well, in fact, you're going to be up in Montgomery during all this stuff going on, and you're looking at 6 to 8 inches up there. So you might want to get that limousine that's...
as long as I've got this large coat that I take with me from time to time, I'll be all right. But I stay in that building so much of the day and night that I don't venture out as much as some. So I'll be all right more than likely. But the only thing I venture out to is heading to the hotel for a few hours sleep and come back.
There you go. Well, it's kind of interesting. This past weekend, John Scherf, who is now the president of the Historical Society.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Well, I think he is. I hope he is. I mean, I may have just promoted him, but I had heard that he was posting pictures with the Scherf family from Springdale and all. And he posted a picture in the back of Springdale with about that much snow on the ground.
Right.
And it was February 1973. I go, it ain't never snowed like that around here. Well, guess what, folks? It's coming this week.
I actually think I remember that. I think I was 7 or 8 years old, and maybe in that range, but I think I remember that.
Yeah. I got to look over there because she's moving around, and I don't know if we got a problem or not. Oh, okay.
She's taking care of you?
She just makes me nervous, man. After 38, do you know we'll be 39 years this year?
Congratulations.
Wow. Yeah, you got to pass legislation on that or something. I mean,
well,
you guys did hear that, right?
I'm kind of glad, yeah.
Boy, that sounded, hey, Mike, can I come with you? I need a good divorce lawyer.
She's been listening to all these new capital murder punishment.
Oh, they're getting pretty serious out there.
Yeah.
We'll be talking about that here in a moment. But but going back to all this weather stuff, it's just crazy. Where do they get global warming from when it's freezing outside?
It's kind of hard to tell on that one.
I'm like, you guys got the wrong, terminology here. It's global freezing.
We've not had some really cold weather in a while, but this year has pretty much
all the fleas are dead.
I was fixing to say it's pretty much set us back to norm.
Right.
Because we've had probably more cold days this year than we've had in probably the last 3 years combined.
Yeah, because it was only like 1 day or 2 days.
But now for hunters, this is...
Oh, yeah, we're going to talk about that in a second. He came in, folks, like this. He had his smartphone. Mine's got stuff all over. Anyway, it fell out in the yard. And he goes like, here, Eddie, look. And I'm like, wow, that's a cute little Bambi.
No. Not at all.
Remember all them young voters out there, cute little Bambi.
Well, I'll post it up later on Facebook. They can judge for themselves. How's that? But no, we had a, excuse me, I'm still recovering from the weekend, I guess. My in-laws were up this weekend, and they come up this time every year. And I go fishing with them in the summer for one weekend. They come and hunt with me for a weekend in the winter, and we look forward to it every year. They live in Georgia. But they were up this weekend, and we have a farm out down Brooklyn Road, and I had a very nice 4 or 5 year old 8-point, weighed about 175 pounds, came out and visited with me Saturday morning, and we loaded up the freezer.
So, freezer? You didn't have to take it to a freezer. You could have just left it outside.
No. We, I'm very big on as far as hunting that I don't think you hunt for sport. I hunt
Oh,
for meat.
I agree. I
We-
meant it was
yeah.
cold enough outside.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
It's true. We didn't have to worry about rushing it into the freezer. But now when we hunt, I'm not a big horn hunter anymore. That was back when I was a little younger. Now
Right.
I won't say if I don't see a big, huge thing, I might not take it for a trophy. But we hunt for meat more than anything. And my in-laws, they make some of the best meals you've ever tasted out of with deer meat, and I want to give them all the meat we can give them to cook with. So,
Well, I know that, I'll talk to Sue, and I'll get some backstrap out of this.
but
Sue's my advocate over there.
no, we were real happy with it. It was the only deer we took this weekend.
Well, deer season's fixing to lock down, isn't it?
We're in part of the county is in the extended season, so there'll be a little bit longer, and so I think about February 9th or so, I think it's when it extends out this year for part of the county, not all the county.
I went to Sporting Lifestyle Saturday over there, the new sporting goods store in
Right,
town.
right.
And I was talking to John Jay over there, and it's been big on hunting this year. I mean, lots of folks. He says the ammunition, the guns, and everything are moving right across. Bow action's been pretty big. They just got that new bow gun. I'm not advertising for it. I'm just, but bow action's been pretty big. I'm thinking about getting into bows now that I've seen what they do. They got, I know it sounds like an advertisement, they got an inside archery.
Well, in bow hunting, when you hunt if you've been hunting for years, especially, and you're really not into just killing deer. I mean,
Right.
when you're younger, it's sort of that's kind of a thing. But when you get older, that's just not the same. And it's more about
meat.
Well, it's about meat, but it's also about getting close to, to nature and you have to spend more time doing scouting, and it gets you out and makes you get out more and spend some time out in the woods. And I'll tell you, it's one of those things where if you can get your kids to go with you, it's great.
Yeah.
Because
You got girls now. Come on.
actually, I enjoy it. I was 2 weeks ago. I was putting out some stands, getting ready for this weekend.
Did they
next
go hunting
weekend.
with you?
Well, they helped me with. They have, but this year they were helping me with stands. This weekend was the first weekend I hunted this year.
Oh, okay.
I haven't had a chance to, but they helped me with some stands 2 weekends ago, and they were putting out flagging and putting out the reflective pins so we could find the trails, and we had a good time. And I've taught them how to spot different tracks and what one track means versus another, and so my daughters can pretty much tell you if is that a doe track or a buck track. They can pretty much tell you.
So when they get older, you can take them up to Montgomery and say, this is a Democrat track and this is a Republican track.
That's a hard track to discern sometime, but
I had to do that.
no, but it's a great thing as far as taking your kids out. I tried to get my daughters to go this weekend, and the words "too cold" came out of their mouths. So,
Gee, I wonder why.
well, it was cool. It wasn't as cold as we thought it was going to be, but it was. We had a great time, great weekend. Did a lot of cooking out, and just enjoyed it.
Well, lots of stuff going on. I've read a bunch of things going on at the state, and we did mention that we're going to be coming up visiting with you on Wednesday. But there's an extension of your session this year. I mean, there's like 3 days versus 2 days now.
Right. We normally have in any particular week two session days, Tuesdays and Thursdays, and that's where we're on the floor and we're actually taking up bills and voting on legislation. Usually Wednesdays is completely a committee day, and that's where the real work takes place. That's where you grind out the amendments and you do a lot of debating on whether this is something that's necessary or not, and you get more open discussion about each bill. And this year, for 2 weeks, we do 3 session days a week, then we do 1 week with 2, and then we go back into 2 weeks, and it flip-flops like that. And so it makes it where the pace is even faster and more intense than the previous 3 years. I thought it was pretty intense those previous 3 years, but now finding out maybe I didn't know what I was talking about. The pace is extraordinarily fast. You're having to take in quite a bit of information very quickly. There's a lot of bills that are getting filed that I called nasty or bad bills. Sometimes, and this is my first experience with an election year session, but I think a lot of bills are getting filed and dropped that probably there's not a real desire to pass them more than there is just to get attention by them.
Fanfare.
Right, and I'm not a believer in that personally. To me, that's it takes away from the credibility of the legislature, but it also, it's an important job. We're doing important things. We're trying to resolve issues that change people's lives and impact people's lives. And I like doing those fanfare things. I think that's a waste of the people's time. But I'm one vote, and I always remind myself of that. I'm one vote out of 105 votes in the House, and that's my opinion. That's where I stand. So I always remind myself that other people have difference of opinion.
Well, Mike, there's a lot of interest for me about the prison, the way laws are being looked at now as far as the death penalty and the I hate to use the word expedite, but it is a way to expedite it. I'll never forget when the former Attorney General Troy King sat in our studios over on East Three Notch years ago when we first started, and he told me about a shooting that he witnessed as a young man, and it was the sheriff of Coffee County that was shot right outside his dad's business or something like that, Troy King, and that man still today is on death row, and death row has no meaning sometimes, and I don't remember the last time that Alabama has actually executed somebody.
Actually, we have.
We have?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think we're either first or second in the nation in steel as far as numbers per year. And I'll tell you this: there's no question that there is a problem with the appellate system as far as some of the rules are being manipulated by some. There's some people that have been on death row for 26 plus years, and I would agree with you. At some point,
how do they do that?
There's some rules they take advantage of. The main rule they take advantage of is something called the Rule 32, the Rules of Criminal Procedure. And basically they just constantly allege that either the lawyer messed up or the court messed up or something messed up. And they allege it of each proceeding, and so it kind of stacks on top of itself. And it's a manipulation of the rule. The rule's really not intended for that exact purpose, obviously. And so there is a need to look at it and to correct and try to fix some of these problems. At the same time, we can't go so extreme to where it will cause the federal courts to immediately kick them all out. So there's a line there somewhere of reasonable that we have to find.
Well, one of the things I was reading on is what you mentioned, is that they go step by step through the proceedings, and I was just, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not, anybody, but wouldn't it be expedient and more effective if they took Rule 32 and said, look, you've got one shot to get all your proceedings done and filed, and instead of breaking it down that on Wednesday the judge did this and then Tuesday the judge did that.
And that's sort of some of the things we're talking about now. It's very common for a Rule 32. In fact, it's almost mandatory that a Rule 32 gets filed after the trial, the main trial. But you can have an appointed lawyer. Most of these lawyers are appointed. You have to remember, in Alabama, we don't have like most states, we don't have a capital defense team or capital defense department or anything like that. That's all they do is capital defenses. And so most of the lawyers in this state are appointed in each county or in each circuit. And frankly, not all of them are seasoned lawyers. Usually there's 2 lawyers appointed per capital defendant case. One has to have at least 5 years or greater experience trying in casework. The other one can have, from right out of law school up to 5. And so you typically don't get the most seasoned lawyer. Sometimes you will get one, but not always. And so if you've not got a history of working these kind of cases, and they're very complicated, very complex, then you can make some mistakes that are simply just not having the experience and the knowledge to know what you're doing. But once that's over, the court then appoints lawyers to the appeal. Well, same problem. If you appoint lawyers that don't regularly appeal cases, especially capital cases, and you make some mistakes that had you had more knowledge and experience, you probably wouldn't have made them, then that's why the Rule 32 can be used in that format as well. So there's at least twice that it's not unusual for it to happen. The problem is that they're using it 10 and 15 and 20.
Well, this man that killed the sheriff in Coffee County, I can't remember his name, you might know, but...
No, I remember what they're talking about, but obviously I was pretty young.
But,
too.
I mean, come on, 26, almost 30
I think that's
years.
ridiculous, no question.
Okay,
Yeah.
and I'm not trying to say go kill somebody, but, I mean, the law said, the law found him guilty. and
no-
he is still.
Yeah, nobody up there, I think, would argue with you that the process has been manipulated and it needs to be corrected. I don't know of anybody that would debate that or argue that point. The issue, once again, is well, where do you bring it down to? How much do you cinch it down? And I think we were given some statistics when we had the public hearing on this that in the last, I can't remember the exact number of years, but it was a period of time that there were approximately nationwide 1,500 placed on death row. 4 of those 1,500 in that same period of time were determined to be not guilty by scientific testing after the fact. And so those 4 would probably tell you that we really would like for you to be careful, and have some precautions. But obviously the vast majority were very much guilty of their crimes. And I agree. I think the only way that you have true justice is that it be direct and that it be appropriate for the crime. And I said this during one of the debates in committee that an eye for an eye. I mean, the Bible speaks to these things, and it's not real complicated. Once again, keep it simple.
The Bible is very, very self-explanatory.
And so, so once you truly, there's no question that the person is guilty of the crime. The justice needs to be as swift as possible. But our Constitution demands that we do make sure that we've protected individual rights at a certain level. And,
of course.
And so that's why that we're having to find that middle ground, wherever it may be. There are those of us that are working on that behind the scenes, and we're trying to come up with appropriate language. I don't like making stuff up the first time. I like looking at other states to learn from their ideas and looking at other people who've done this before. There is a little bit of haste being taken with this time. Normally, this process doesn't go through the legislature. Normally, it would go through the Supreme Court and the Court of Criminal Appeals. And those judges, with their years of expertise and years of experience, are probably better situated to determine these details than a bunch of legislators, most of which are not lawyers and have anything to do with any of this. And even those of us that are lawyers do not regularly practice capital cases. So that's one of the debates, is whether or not this should be addressed.
Why
more in
did
the
it
courts.
get to the House?
Because probably it's an election year, and this is an issue that most times will be received well by the public. Most all of us agree that
It's a button push.
well, I even agree with this. Is that if someone's killed somebody, they should be they should pay for it.
But it's not normally taken up by the House.
Well, the law allows it, but correct. This is something that normally we assign committees of experts that typically are judges, people who've had years of experience in these cases, that they then can give more experience and knowledge to try to help cure the problem than taking a bunch of novices who've never touched any of those things and let them address those kind of questions. To me, the concern is we're going to maybe go too far, and the federal courts are going to kick them all back, which is not what anybody wants, including the victims' families.
Right.
We want to make sure that once we do this, it stays in place and justice is accomplished.
Well, this morning I read, and I know this is getting a little bit off of it, but we have a crowding system in the jails. And when we get to the state penitentiary, we have even worse cases.
Right.
Today we have 244 inmates at the Covington County Jail. That jail is only designed for 180. And God bless Sheriff Meeks and Preston over there for trying to keep that in order. But is there any way? I know it's an election year, and I know there's things that people. Oh yeah, I'm all for that. But seriously, without it being an election year, what can we do to, folks are saying build jails. No, that ain't the answer. Some are saying, well, let the less criminals out and have them in parole or not parole but probation and things like that. You're gonna love me for this because this is like totally out of left field. And but what about the majority of the people that are in our Covington County Jail, okay, for drug-related charges? And I'm not advocating that we legalize drugs, but we're even talking in Florida. They're talking about legalizing medical marijuana. And a lot of these folks that are in jail, I've read, I don't know how many today, possession of marijuana, and they're in our jail system. Many states have a citation that is issued, they don't arrest people. They give them a citation, pay the, fine. Generates lots of revenue for the cities and the counties and the state that it's in. But locking them up puts the taxpayer paying their bill. And I'm just trying to, I know where you stand on this, okay? But again, logically speaking, for cost effectiveness, we have to have somewhere to go. And I think it's by, gosh, I don't want to sound like, Pothead Eddie or anything, but no, you gotta take it for what it really is. I mean, these people are getting arrested for a little bit of marijuana, not sell, make it illegal to sell it, make it illegal to grow it, all right? But possession of it, these people are going to jail and crowding our jail system. There's 1,500 on death row. We need to speed that up some way.
That's nationwide. That's not in the state. But
okay.
One thing I would say is this: in Alabama, the first arrest or conviction of possession of marijuana is actually a misdemeanor, and so it's very much a low level as far as punishment. And in Alabama now, we have several programs: drug court, we have the diversion programs, we have
good program.
Right. We have a number of different programs that, and many of these have come online in the last 5 years. Some as recently as this past couple of years, and that are to help address some of these things that are on the lower level of the spectrum as far as criminal issues. And so I think there have been steps, and I don't think there's any silver bullet to address the issue of overcrowding in prisons. But I think it's a multiple step step process. I think the diversion programs and the court and the drug courts are the one step. I think that as far as the punishment range for possession of marijuana, when you're talking about a bunch of college kids and they're going to the beach and someone's got a joint in the car, I mean, that's one thing. When you're talking about somebody who is routinely stopped, and that's just that's just one drug of many that they're using. That's a different scenario. And I think right now our court systems do kind of weigh and balance those by saying, well, obviously, this is not a situation that we're trying to throw somebody in jail for. We're trying to teach them a lesson and have them learn from the situation. Then you may have another situation where clearly there's a history, clearly there's more there, and this is beyond just someone who's first time they ever tried it or something like that. This is somebody who's habitually into it. This is an entry-level drug, and they're using more than that. So our system is already designed to try to help balance that. And I'll say this, most of the people in prison, 75%, they're in Alabama state prisons, are in there for violent crimes. So the number we're talking about that are in the prison system that are there for these lower level drug cases, Class C felony cases, it's a very small percentage of the overall population. Most of the ones that are in there are the very ones that we don't want to let out because they have a violent crime history. And those are the ones that scare the public. Those are the ones that you wouldn't want as your next door neighbor or anything like that. So that's why I'm saying there's no silver bullet, and there has to be a balance. I think that we have to protect the public, and when we're dealing with violent offenders, we simply have to keep that as the primary concern. I think when the issue is more about someone's harming themselves, not the public, I think that's the situation where we can have some room to work with. And we have been working on that at the beginning. We're in the beginning stages of that. One of the things I brought up last time we talked was work camps, and that to me is an idea that the cost of it is much less than your normal prison situation, and there's actually a return for the investment because with the work that's done by the inmates, some of the money comes back to help take care of the facilities and to take care of the prisoners themselves. And so, to me, that's a rational approach. That's a step that addresses that 20 to 25% that are in that lower level, where it would not be such an enormous cost on our public and on our taxpayers. That would make more sense. And there's states that are already doing it, so we don't have to learn from scratch. We can learn from these other states. Right. To me, that's an idea that we should take more advantage of. I know it's been discussed. I can't tell you where it stands at this point, and I've made my opinions known. That's the best I can do.
I know your opinion on it. Well, you used a what do they call it? A word when it causes a reaction. trying to think of it. You used a word that draws attention, and it sits there and it makes it sound terrible. Okay, I mean it's a negative thing to it, and that is entry-level drugs. Okay, marijuana is an entry-level drug. Well, I'll agree with you. Okay, alcohol is also classified as an entry-level drug. Nicotine is considered an entry-level drug. Prescription drugs that are prescribed are entry-level drugs. Entry-level means, and I've looked this up because I keep...
Gateway, doorway,
right,
there's a lot of
gateway,
terms. Yeah.
all of this. And to me, it's used to scare the public, into thinking that, oh, marijuana, because I remember the 60s, okay, and 70s, where marijuana was made out to be one of the worst things. Now, it may have been because it fried a lot of minds back in the cities, or in the 60s, in the Flower Children and all that. I saw that. I lived that. And no, that's not Eddie's problem. I mean, Eddie didn't do that.
And I know what you're saying. For me, it's not meant to scare anybody. And there's actually been a lot of research on all of this. Marijuana today is by no means what it was in the 60s. It's a whole different genetic makeup. I mean, there's been so much work on scaling up the potency of marijuana that's grown today. It's kind of like in Auburn, they spend so much work on making sure that the pine trees we plant withstand weather, withstand insects, withstand fire, and they've just changed the genetics over time and worked on it to where we have some of the best wood in the world because the research that Auburn has done, updating, keeping our trees where they're the best that we can grow. Well, marijuana's been the same way. There's been a lot of people that are chemists in these colleges and around that have done a lot of work to upgrade the marijuana.
You know more about it than I do, Mike.
and so it's a lot different than it was back in the 60s. There's a lot more lacing of marijuana. And by lacing,
see, that's what scares me is the lacing.
Is that the people that sell these things tend to lace it with other drugs, and they do it and it's intentional. They do it to try to get people into that next level of drug.
But see, that's not the marijuana. That is another drug that's introduced into the marijuana. Do you follow right?
I'm not disagreeing with you,
Okay.
but it's being used for that purpose. It's being used. They're lacing it on marijuana because people think marijuana is safer to use, and it's not as much of a big deal. But when people are buying it, and they're buying it illegally, when they're buying it, there's no way they can know what's on it, in it, where it came from, nothing about it. So,
Mike, I'm sitting here jumping because you're giving me so many opportunities. Let's go ahead and
You're going to tell me some background about your latest purchase of marijuana?
Sheriff ain't watching. No, I don't purchase marijuana, and I don't get it free.
I just swallow there at the end.
You're going to make me forget where I was going, but we need to go ahead and make, folks, I will confess on things, okay, but I'm not going to do it right now. but this sounds just so wrong what you just did to me, Mike. But I hope your mom's watching because
probably is. Probably is.
But anyway, if we're talking about the lacing end of marijuana, okay?
And that's just one thing.
All right, yeah. But let's just take that, all right? So alcohol, okay, is a legal drug, okay? We can turn around and it's used for date rape drugs to be added to it. Do you see where I'm going with
If
this?
someone hands you a drink, you don't know where they brought it from or if they put anything in it, that's correct. Same
All
basic
right.
concept.
Same thing with the marijuana. You don't know what was presented and all this. So we're making marijuana illegal. We're making alcohol legal, but we can still slip stuff. The point that I'm making, Mike, is that the lacing of it could be anything. It could be tobacco. It could be, anything in there. And that's why I'm saying these key words that are being used. And that's where I'm focusing on. I'm not an advocate for marijuana use. In the military, I saw where it destroyed a lot of folks. I was in combat, and lots of guys, would think that being high on marijuana would give them, a better attitude going into combat and made them sleep.
Well,
and it wasn't a good thing.
In the last, since I've been in elected office, the approaches regarding marijuana and being legalized in this state have been all about for medical use.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the
That I'm an
arguments.
advocate for.
Well, one of the arguments against doing anything different now is that there's already medication on the market that you have to be prescribed by a medical doctor. That is exactly that. It's basically the marijuana, the chemical that makes up marijuana in a
Did
capsule.
Ron tell you about that?
Do I know?
Ron.
Actually, my wife's a pharmacist.
Oh, that's
and
right,
She,
yeah, that's
and
right.
she had told me that it's been around as long as she could remember. But the physician has to prescribe it depending on the need. So there's already a medicine on the
What
market.
about this oil, though, for this seizure?
That's something that's coming up this year. I've only seen the very beginnings of it. It hasn't come through us yet. It probably won't. It'll probably go through the health committee. I'm on judicial committee. And so I may not see that bill or see the final result of it until and if it comes to the House floor. I've read a few things on it, but not enough to know much about it. The one thing that stands out is that it's not been approved or reviewed by the FDA. That's a concern. If they're using it for that purpose, that's a normal part of the process to make sure that it's not harmful to the public. To me, it's awkward to say let's allow it to be used by the public as for medicinal purposes when it's not even been checked out by the FDA at this point. And whereas every other drug, that would be the normal course.
But a lot of states already have it as a
I think 2 states is to the best of my knowledge, but once
for
again,
the oil.
yeah.
Oh,
It
I
may
thought
be
it was
more,
more
but
than
I
that,
think
yeah.
it was 2 that have actually
I know
legalized
Florida's
it.
working on making marijuana itself, legal.
Well,
for
and I think Colorado has done that. I know that Washington State is reviewing it now, and maybe Florida. So I
for
know,
medical purposes, not
right.
just off the street.
The difference, though, that I see is that you can get it in pill form where you have to just swallow it. But this group is apparently saying, well, swallowing is not good enough. We want to smoke it. At that point when I start saying, guys, it's really about the medicinal side of it, or
Right.
we just like smoking pot. And
Well, the oil does not get you high.
and that's my understanding.
Right.
I have not read as much on that. That's the first time I've
Boy,
heard
it
this
might
issue.
sound like an expert on it. First, folks, let me make this perfectly clear. I did not inhale. All right, now.
I didn't ask a question. I knew better, but I really don't know as much about that. The person that's bringing that bill is an ex-ABI agent,
Right.
who has a reputation in the House for being fairly tough on criminal issues. And I will say that the fact that he's bringing it has my curiosity up, because he would be an unusual member to bring a bill of that nature. And so I'm going to take a look at it and read it. I'm not one of these that walks into it and has an opinion before I even know anything about it. I like to read about it first. And I just haven't read enough to be able to tell you or anybody much about it.
Well, Mike, one of the things that our next guest is coming in, but one of the things that we're talking about the marijuana, we're talking about some of these bills that are out there. A lot of times when bills like this come up, there's people behind them called lobbyists. And some of the times, and I've noticed this here in Alabama a lot, is that if you're a legislature or former governor, you're prime beef for being a lobbyist and going back in. There's a bill right now being presented to the House, and I believe it's Senate.
I think it's in the Senate
Yeah,
right
it's
now.
in the Senate right now. And when it comes to the House, you'll be looking at that, but it's, requiring 2 years, outside of office. And
To be able to lobby in either chamber.
right, because
Right.
right now, if you're a senator, you can go ahead and leave and go lobby
In the House.
Yeah, House.
And then vice versa. If you
Yeah.
come out of the House, you can lobby
There's a
in the Senate.
loophole in
Right.
that. So they're trying to cinch that up a little bit. What do you think about that? I mean, I know you don't want to be a lobbyist.
No.
You're doing
I
good where you're at.
I actually think the original law, I think that was the intent. I don't think it was intended to where it was to say if you're from the House and you come out that you should be able to lobby in the Senate. I think the intent of the original law was that you should not be able to lobby, period, for 2 years. And to me, that makes perfect sense. I mean, I'm in the Senate almost as much as I'm in the House, especially about halfway through the session on. In fact, many in the Senate would argue that I'm in the Senate more than I'm in the House chamber because
Well, Jimmy says you are because he buys you lunch all the time.
well, but to get a House bill through the entire system, once you leave the House chamber, you have to push just as hard in the Senate, and so you have to be in the Senate to be able to do that and to work it. And so about halfway through the session, most of the House bills that I think will make it have already made that jump, and so that I naturally then spend more time. Because of that, I obviously have relationships, just like, with Senate members, just like I do with House members. And so I think for the very same reason and purpose, I think this law is a good law or a good bill. When it comes to me, unless there's any kind of crazy change made to it, I plan on supporting it. I think it makes perfect sense, and I think that was the original intent of the law that's in place now.
Okay, now we've been talking about marijuana and drugs.
And lobbyists, okay.
And lobbyists. Now we're going to talk about legislative drug screening.
Okay.
That's a bill that's coming up. It's going to be on
Must be the
Tuesday.
Senate. Yeah, it must be the Senate. I actually didn't hear about that until
Trip Pittman, I believe it is.
I'm sure Senator Trippman brought that, but
You know him, how they take it.
Trip's a trip. I didn't honestly know anything about the bill until I came back in from hunting this weekend. And I was reading paper. I had a stack of papers last night that I was going through, and that was really the first time I heard anything about it. The Senate bills this early in the session, because we are pretty much divided at the beginning of the session. I don't hear much about them until they make the jump to the House. And frankly, I don't look too deeply at them, because until they make the jump to the House, if they don't pass the first hoop and clear the Senate, they're not worth wasting the time to read them to we're on the House side. So I have to read so many bills as it is, Eddie, just to keep up. I don't want to add to that mix from bills that may never even make it that far.
All right, now here's one that I like. Okay,
This ought to be good.
Okay, this is Senate Bill 188, which you may not or may know of. Linda Coleman of Birmingham is putting it out there, that would allow counties to issue car tag registrations that are good for 2 years.
I'm not aware of it.
Okay.
And so I can't.
This is to cut down the lines over there, but then you only have every 2 years to stand in line.
Because I'm not aware of it, I don't know anything about the bill itself. The only thing, and I'll tell you, it's kind of like your driver's license. Because your driver's license, I think, is every 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Used to, when the state sent you those notices a few months in advance, it's no big deal. But nowadays, we don't seem to get those notices like we used to. And so, with too much time in between, going back to that cycle, you tend to forget. And I see all the time people in court who come up and they'll want to bring their license up there, and frankly, we'll be the ones to tell them, did you know your license is expired? So, the longer you go without that routine, the more you're apt to forget it, and that's a concern they'll have to address. Because one of the concerns I've got is that people seem to be forgetting their driver's license more and more frequently, but I think it's because they're not given a reminder.
Well, here's one that you'll probably know about, and it's a House committee bill, HB 141, Patricia Todd of Birmingham, to exempt veterinarians for working for nonprofit spay-neuter clinics from prohibiting against working for a non-veterinarian. Dr. Drumhiller and I talked about this over in Op here just shortly a while back, and her daughter, and there's a lot of confusion on that, because it's there's a lot of rescue missions out there,
right?
And for animals, what do you think the outcome of that will be, and is that going to be a regulation or a new bill
that bill has been floating around for every year I've been in the House. The general position against it is, by having a vet part of the process, and this is surgery on animals that they're doing. I mean, right now, that's legally to be done. It's done by the vet.
Right.
But it's also a way of regulating to make sure that the facility meets code, and that everything about it is up to code. Some of these places that we're talking about, I mean, frankly, they're not what their name implies they are. They make it sound like they're safe harbor for animals or something like that. Sometimes they become scams. Sometimes they become actually worse for animals than what people are led to believe. And the only way to really keep a check on that is to keep that veterinary side involvement in place. And I tend to agree with that. I mean, I've seen some of those bad scenarios, and those people had to be prosecuted, right, and so on. And if you'd seen some of the conditions of those animals were in, I mean, it's hard not to support the veterinarians having a role in it.
Well, we just went through, the pit bull fights,
right,
and now this weekend cockfights.
I don't know about that. So.
Yeah, wow.
Okay.
Anyway, we're going to take a quick commercial break. We're getting a house full of folks standing in line to see us, and we're going to go ahead and take care of that real quick. Come on back with our interview with you. We want to talk about some of the bills that you've got facing you in the House, and there's a couple of good ones. I want to talk about the gun bill as well, because there was supposed to be some tweaking going on and all that, and I haven't heard nothing about that.
Okay.
So, but folks, we'll be back with our Representative Mike Jones from the 92nd District here in Covington County, Coffee County, Escambia County.
Correct.
And that's it.
That's it.
Okay. That's
Covington,
it.
Coffee, and Escambia.
Boy, yeah, and he expanded some. We'll talk just a little bit about that. But anyway, folks, thanks for watching. Good news, Covington County. We'll be back with more right after these messages. Stay tuned. We're going to have Chris Bird on, also following Mike with our, he's running for sheriff, Covington County Sheriff. So he's in the house, and glad to have him in. Keep it real. Keep God in it. God bless you. We'll be right back. Hello and welcome back to WKNI TV. I'm sorry, we're just sitting here off camera having a good time. We're here with Representative Mike Jones Jr. And I'm going to say this for your mom if she's watching. You better straighten him out. We had a lot of fun off camera. And anyway, Mike, again, I appreciate you, being straight up with me. There's things that just don't make sense. And this is, again, an election year like you keep bringing up, and there's legislation being presented. Then you sit there and you go, really? Tell me it ain't so type stuff.
Right.
But it's there for political reasons. And
I mean, sometimes there's people that really are pushing issues, but this year the bills are being dropped much faster. I forget the number when I left, but I mean, there's a large number that have already been dropped.
Just so they can say they presented
well,
it.
sometimes it's just because they filed it, and papers will pick up and see some of these really crazy-looking bills when they're filed, and they'll run pieces on them. Sometimes they'll be interviewed, just like we're being interviewed, because of just filing it. And it may not take another step in the process, but filing it got some press time. And I don't, like I've told you, I'm not a big believer in that. I understand it. I understand it's part of the political process for some. I just, one of my goals in being in the legislature is to return some of the credibility back to the legislature that it had when I was a kid.
Right.
Is that, frankly, when I was a kid, I remember, and even with Seth, you look up and you had great respect because they were statesmen and they held themselves as statesmen. And what came out of Montgomery was something that, you trusted and you looked to. And because there's been so many things that have happened in the years, last 20 years, it's made the public as a whole distrust government everywhere. Right. I don't think you can make the change to bring credibility back to government or to our legislature without it happening from inside and coming out. I think that members have to say, I'm going to handle myself differently. I'm going to act respectful. I'm going to be a statesman, and I'm going to treat others with respect. And then over a period of time, doing that and showing that and being that, I think you can regain that credibility with the public. But it has to start from inside the legislature. It'll never happen from the public looking at it from the outside in unless we're willing to step up and do those kind of things. And that's my approach. So I don't like the politics that plays out in election season when you have bills dropped just to get notoriety. I think that hurts the credibility of the office. And but I'm one member and one vote, and I'm always cognizant of that. And so my goal is if someone up to my left agrees with me, then they'll hold themselves out that way. Someone to my right, then they'll hold themselves out that way, and over time you'll see a progression. And frankly, there are a lot of members who believe just like I do, and who work and live and do what they're doing in Montgomery exactly the same way. They're very much statesmen, men and women. I have great respect for them because they do handle their work with great respect and honor.
Well, I'll have to say this. I'm not saying it's all because you're there, but I'll being nice. But this past 4 years has been a huge change in the administrative as well as the executive and legislative branches in Montgomery. More fiscal responsibility has come through. We've got a governor that is not afraid of anything. I think he's just, outstanding governor up there that is, making things happen. And we've got legislatures in there that are really working hard to benefit. We've got here locally Senator Hawley and yourself that are very instituting new bills and new ideas and fresh ideas into it. You've got some sitting in there in front of you which you are working on. Would you share those with us?
You know, most of the bills I'm working on this year are procedural bills that have to be put in place. One bill, and these are not the kind of bills that are going to put me in the paper or anything like that, but they're things that we have to do. One of them is to update the Uniform Commercial Code, and it's something that unless you're a lawyer or you have a business where you sell refrigerators or things of that nature, you're not going to know what that means or anything about it. But nationwide, this code is in each state, and it makes the contracts for selling, like refrigerators and dryers and anything like that. It makes the contracts uniform across the board in each state. And so that if you buy it here, it's the same here and it's the same in that state. And you have to update it every so often to keep up with, with advancements. Our state is one of the last to have actually done that. We've been trying to pass this for a few years. It's not that anybody's against it. There's never been a negative vote against it. It's a 100-page bill.
Wow.
And the area of our state code that deals with this is very lengthy. This bill actually cuts it down a good bit and makes it more concise. But when you pass a bill of that size in a politically charged climate, if somebody says they want it read at length, it would basically kill a legislative day. And so it's a difficult bill to pass unless you pass it very early in the session. So I've been working on that bill to get it through early. There's also one that deals with LPG gas, liquid propane gas, and very much a procedural bill. It reduces the code in our Alabama code by probably 20 pages, and so we've cleaned up a lot of things, gotten rid of stuff that's not ever used, and it's where the commission and the association, that's the Government Regulatory Board and the Association of Propane people who distribute it and sell it, agree, and so there's no dispute. All this has all been worked out. And once again, it's not a hard bill. There's never a negative vote. It's just a lengthy bill. And so that's another one that I'm trying to get through early in the session. The bill that I've worked on the most, though, since last summer, is a bill that brings more security to teachers and education workers in general in our state, so that they can't be sued for doing their jobs. And by sued, I mean suing for money damages. We don't have any state code or any law that's on our books that deals with that for teachers. We have a phrase in our Constitution of 1901 that's used and interpreted in cases that have come up over the decades. And these appellate courts that look at these cases, that's basically how what law we have has been put into place. Unfortunately, we're one of only 5 states in the nation that have never codified immunity for teachers in these kind of situations. And so we hope to be on that list of many that have already codified it by the end of the session. This is something I've worked on for months. I've worked real hard at making sure to educate Democrats, Republicans, all the different education associations. It also affects state employees the same way. And this bill passed through committee the first week, and it was on the House floor, I think, Wednesday of this past week, and it passed on the House floor, I believe, 96-0. And this is a Republican platform bill. It's one of those few bills that our caucus has said is a priority. And to have that strong a bipartisan support on the House floor was phenomenal. I can't say how.
I've never heard of 100% before.
It's rare, and especially for a Republican platform bill, it's extraordinarily rare. So I can't tell you how much. There's been a lot of work to get it to that point. But I also made sure that we let members look at it well in advance, and I went around and answered any questions they might have, and so it's worked out. It's going to be in committee in the Senate Wednesday, this coming week, and I'll present it to the committee.
On Wednesday?
On Wednesday. And
I think we'll be there.
I've heard about that. And then Senator Hawley is the sponsor of the companion bill in the Senate, and so once it passes the Senate committee, he'll be the one to take it to the Senate floor. And Senator Hawley's made it one of his priorities as well. So, and I know Senator Hawley very well, and I'm here to tell you if
so I'm going to get to see both of you on Wednesday.
You'll probably see Senator Hawley. I don't think he's actually sits on the committee that it'll be presented to, but he will be the one to take it to the final step. And
I'll be there for the handoff.
I think so. But it's a bill that we put a lot of work in. The one good thing about it, beyond the obvious, is it not only applies to certified employees, which are teachers, it also applies to non-certified employees, which are cafeteria workers, maintenance staff, bus drivers. Correct. And that's only right. I mean,
Bus drivers have such a risk. I know all teachers do, but bus drivers have such a risk of upsetting a parent. They really do.
but they also have the risk of protecting our children, which
That's right.
we've had that happen obviously here recently, to where a bus driver sacrificed his life to protect a child. And you know, those are things that we just have to do the right thing. And this is not protecting somebody from doing a criminal act or
Right.
anything like that, anything obviously outside the scope of their work. This is for them doing their jobs, where they get sued not because I think they can even hope to win, but they know that lawyers and insurance companies will pay a settlement that'll be cheaper than trying the case. And so it just becomes this little cycle of lottery almost. And we're going to try to put an end to that. That's just not right. It makes the school systems have to spend a lot of money they shouldn't have to spend on lawyers, on insurance, on a lot of different things. And so a side effect of this will actually be to save some money for the teachers and for the schools.
Mike, I can't tell you how much we appreciate you. I know you got to run. We pushed you into the corner over here. And we'll get up with you later on today and find out what we're looking forward to on Wednesday. I've already talked to the security. What's his name?
Derek Hamilton.
He sounds like a big tough guy.
He's a linebacker for the New York Giants. I'm kidding, but he looks like that. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, we got a microphone acting up, so we're going to jump on out of here. So God bless you. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Folks, remember, keep it real, keep God in it. We'll be back with Chris Bird right after this.